So it's me, obviously. And so I decided that I was going to start vlogging during our ISP period. Okay, I haven't explained anything. So basically, the program I'm in right now, which is SIT, Multiculturalism and Human Rights, we have an independent research period, which actually works super well with my independent research project that I won the presidential scholarship for. So I decided with all the free time that we have this month, I should probably vlog because I have not blogged or vlogged the entire time I've been abroad, and I sort of promised I would. So this I thought would be a good way of like getting to everything I said I would do super late. So just to recap, I guess this is like an introduction video. Just to recap, since summer, I've been traveling. I first went to South Africa, and then I went to Peru, and then now I'm in Morocco. And what I'm doing is an independent research project on the influence of languages on social movements. So in South Africa, I did research on the influence of Afrikaans, English, Zulu, and Xhosa in the apartheid era, how different actors used their different languages to, I guess, communicate what they wanted to communicate to advance their causes, especially the cause being against, the discrimination of Black South Africans, who themselves are split amongst many different ethnic groups, which all speak their own languages. So that was that research project, which I'm not explaining well. Then in Peru, I was studying how the Quechua people use Quechua in their indigenous rights movements, and I will elaborate more on that in another video. And then now I'm in Morocco studying how the French and Arabic languages were used during the 20th of February movement, which was Morocco's version of the Arab Spring. And it occurred in February of 2011. But the protest sort of continued all year. So that's what I'm working on now. I actually just finished messaging several activists of the movement to see if I could schedule interviews. So inshallah, we'll see. Um, so yeah, I just have not been blogging or vlogging, so I thought I'd get to that. I wanted to talk about like a few things, I guess, to like excuse myself, my non-excuse excuses. Some of them include like it's kind of hard to like blog abroad about like substantial topics when your day is like really filled with classes, which it sort of has been in South Africa, Peru, and Morocco. So there was many days I'd only get home at like 5 or 4 or 6, and so then you have to sleep and like do homework. So blogging takes a lot of time. Writing takes a lot of time for me personally, not for other people, I guess, but I'm talking about for me personally, writing takes a lot of time. So I didn't want to produce low quality material just because I was sort of strapped for time. Also, writing sort of, especially if it takes a long time, it takes out of your experience of the host culture a little bit. If you only have like 4 or 6 hours in a day to do things, it kind of sucks to have to spend like 3 of those writing. So that's again another reason for the vlogs during this specific period when I have this free time. Like I'm moved out of my host family's house. This is our apartment. Um, yeah. Also, when I write, I tend to write about things that have really like impacted me on a very deep level. I tend to write when I'm angry or sad. That those are like probably account for 90% of the things that I write. So I haven't really felt that way. I'll take that back. I haven't felt that way to the extent I felt that way in Argentina when I was writing all about experiences of being black and experiences of being a woman, and I was so indignant and angry and sad and frustrated, and that's where all of that came from. But now I've been more chill, pretty much. Um, so that's another reason for not writing, because when I write, I try to communicate those feelings in a more poetic manner. I guess turning something like being catcalled on the street, writing it down and making it into 3 separate episodes sort of gives power to me. It sort of makes me feel like I have control over the men on the street. Or noticing something, having like the relationship with my blackness, like hammering it out on a Word document, picking words, copying and pasting. That's sort of reclaiming identity for me. So I didn't want to, so that's what I reserve writing for, is what I'm trying to say. Things that have really impacted me on a very deep level, things that really frustrate me or make me sad. Writing is sort of a form of therapy for those things. Like my very first blog post in Argentina, I wrote just because I was angry one day. I went outside and the catcalls were really bad, and so I came home and wrote that. and decided to share it. So that's what happened. And so lots of the things that have had happened in South Africa and Peru and in Morocco have been a little bit more trivial. Not that I haven't been impacted deeply in like many episodes, but not the constant everyday bombardment that it was in Argentina of one thing. So I didn't want to write this super poetic blog post about like a trip to the hammam, for example, or I'm looking at my like topics right now, or a song. I felt like I didn't have the content to write this super poetic, filled with analogies thing about something like belly dancing, for example. So I thought it would be a better medium to do vlogs so you could see me like talk, because talking and telling stories is the kind of way I would talk about these topics I'm going to talk about. These are things that I wouldn't really write about per se. I don't know if I'm making sense. Probably not, but I tried. And then one last thing I was going to cover before I started with the first topic is that I'm going to be doing these videos in the order in which I traveled. So videos about things from South Africa, followed by videos from things from Peru. Then I have a brief break with one video about Spain, because I've been to Spain twice since I've been in Morocco. And then videos about Morocco, obviously, because I'm here right now. So yeah, that's basically it. So I think I've talked about everything I wanted to cover in the introduction: what I'm studying, why I'm here, I want a scholarship, why I'm doing the videos now, why I'm doing them in the way I'm doing them, why I'm doing them instead of writing, instead of the typical study abroad blog, which is what I did when I was in Argentina last year, and the differences between writing and storytelling for me. Oral storytelling, the differences in how I tell things. So the first topic I have from South Africa is actually about Table Mountain. For those of you who do not know, I studied abroad in South Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa. And Table Mountain is this huge mountain, like, in the middle of the city. Pretty much anywhere in the city you can see Table Mountain. We lived pretty close to the mountain, so if, like, walking outside of the front door in the morning, the first thing you see is, like, this monolithic, huge structure that just took up the whole sky. And so this I almost did write about, but I don't know, it just didn't flow well. So I started to imagine Table Mountain as like a woman. Well, first of all, I guess I should back up. I posted a picture a few weeks ago with the caption that I've started to associate mountains with traveling, and what I meant by that is there's not really mountains where I'm from. At least not in my hometown of Florence, South Carolina. In the north of the state, then yes, you can argue that there are mountains, but I'm not from the north of the state. So the first time I ever really had an experience with mountains was through travel, like going to camp in North Carolina, or the second time I ever left the U.S. was to travel to Costa Rica, and it's a very mountainous country, beautiful, beautiful country, filled with mountains. Then after Costa Rica, I was in Argentina. Our excursions, Buenos Aires is obviously not a mountainous place, but our excursions would take us to the mountains. And then going to Mexico City and being surrounded by mountains, then going to Cape Town and having a mountain in the middle of the city, and then being surrounded by mountains as well, then going to Lima, which is sort of like the only non-mountain part of that area of Peru. It's on a cliff. I mean, so I can't really say it's flat necessarily. And then coming to Morocco, where Rabat is on a beach, but then all of our excursions have taken us like into the mountains. So it's almost like mountains in my mind exist as a thing in foreign countries that don't really exist in the U.S. I remember when I was in Costa Rica thinking like, oh my gosh, I wish like we had mountains in the U.S., which is, we obviously have mountains in the U.S. I had just never experienced mountains like that before because I'm from Florence, South Carolina. Anyway, so coming back to Table Mountain, it was super just out of my experience with nature, with architecture, with, I don't, place structure, I don't know, to have a mountain right in the middle of the city. And eventually I came to sort of personify Table Mountain as a woman, like a strong woman. If any of you are friends with me or know me well in any capacity, you know I sort of have an obsession with strong women and mention them very frequently. So I started to personify Table Mountain as this strong woman that sort of just stood in the middle of Cape Town. Um, I remember when we would volunteer outside of Cape Town, going into the townships, which is where the Black Africans and colored South Africans were pushed out of the city during the apartheid era. We volunteered in an orphanage, which was about 30 minutes outside of Cape Town. And it was the first time we went was the first time I had left Cape Town and noticed that Table Mountain was actually a part of a mountain chain, which is not something you would think if you lived in the city because you cannot see any other mountains except Table Mountain, pretty much. So it was really interesting to see that she was part of this huge mountain chain that like stretched as far as you could see if you were moving out of the city. But the closer you got to the city, she was all you could see, which I thought was super interesting. It's almost like you didn't know she had this like huge support system behind her in the city. One thing I loved about Table Mountain was that at nighttime, oh yeah, and when you were coming back into the city, you're passing all of these little mountains that lead up to Table Mountain. I mean, I guess they're not little, but if you are in Cape Town and you see Table Mountain and then you leave the city and start to come closer to the other mountain chains, Table Mountain looks huge by comparison just because of the distance, just because of the way the roads are set up. So as you're coming back into the city, passing all of these mountain chains that you don't notice exist when you're living in Cape Town, like you come around this bend when you're coming from the airport, and then suddenly she's there. And she just fills up the entire sky. The whole sky is Table Mountain. And it was just the coolest thing for me personally to experience. Coming back to like this strong woman personification that I gave Table Mountain, it was just so cool, like how bravely, I guess, she like dominated the sky. Like you would leave a building, like our study center and our house, I told you already, were very close to Table Mountain. You would leave the building and the first thing you saw was Table Mountain. The first thing that took your eye was Table Mountain, and like she was just like this immobile mass. Like she was not gonna move. She was there yesterday, she would be there tomorrow, she's here today. And everyone just had to stop and look at her. You just couldn't not look at her. And I don't know, I thought that was really cool, thinking of like strong women. I guess it could also be problematic because strong women do not always have to be the center of attention. That's sort of a not a good way. Strength comes in many forms. I also love that when it was nighttime, the whole sky would be black, and then there'd be this mass in the sky that you'd look at that was just blacker than black, and it was her. And it was just her. Like it, like even in the darkness, I always told people like it was seeing Table Mountain during the nighttime was the best time to see her, almost, because like you think you won't see her, but you still see her. She's still there. And I started to wonder, like, do people ever get annoyed of seeing Table Mountain? Do people get bored? Do people still notice her, like all the wear and tear that she goes through with rain and wind or whatever, or tourists like us scaling up to the top. In fact, I was getting my hair braided in a Senegalese braiding shop, and there was a music video from insert West African country shot on Table Mountain. And it was so funny because of the cheesy production, and like I had stood in that same exact spot. They literally took a camcorder and started recording on Table Mountain, which I thought was funny, humorous. Um, she's seen so much. Like she's seen, like she was there like when the Dutch settlers came. Like she was there before all of the colonization. She was there when the Quasian people were there. She's in all these indigenous myths. She saw apartheid like unravel. Like if you could see what Table Mountain has seen, and still stand as strong as she stands, I don't know. I'm getting emotional over an inanimate object in nature. But it was just so cool. She just had this way about her. I don't know. It was almost as if she was a person. It was truly as if she was a person, that every morning you'd leave your house and be like, "Oh my gosh, like good morning, Table Mountain." And we had this homestay that was right basically on the, uh, is there an English word? Like on the side of the mountain, perhaps. I guess like very close to the side of the mountain. She literally took up the whole entire skyline when you woke up in the morning and went on the balcony. And that night, the first night of our homestay, was super cloudy. It was super dark, and you just couldn't see her at all, which was weird because it was very rare that you couldn't see her at all, unless it was just super super cloudy. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to see her in the morning, to say good morning to her, I guess. And the next morning, she was there. But if you had seen it the night before, like the sky was completely black, completely covered by clouds. Um, it just didn't make sense how something so gigantic could almost appear out of thin air. Like, she didn't appear out of thin air, but if you were there the night before and had seen that there was no trace of her, and then in the morning she was your whole sky, it was just like, I don't know. She was just gorgeous. She was gorgeous, and sometimes if there was a cloudy day, she would like pull clouds to her, almost as if she was like cloaking herself. And the sun, like when the sun was setting, the sunlight would hit the clouds, and it was just the most magnificent. I don't know, man. I don't know. She was just gorgeous. The way she stood, the way she watched, the way she was there every morning, whether you wanted to see her, whether you didn't want to see her, whether you ignored her, whether you didn't ignore her, whether you were in a bad mood, whether you were mad at something that was going on in South Africa, like she was there every morning, just a constant presence, whether you drove out of the city and couldn't see her and then came around the bend and she was everywhere, whether you went to the other side and temporarily couldn't see her, but the second you returned to the middle of the city, she was everywhere. It was just, I don't know if it's just I wasn't raised around mountains, so now I have this attachment to this one mountain that I saw up close and personal, but I don't know. She was just gorgeous. And I remember when I went to Robben Island, you could see her from Robben Island. I don't know. And I'm not trying to, you know, make some very mushy montage about what it must be like to be a prisoner at Robben Island and wake up to Table Mountain every morning, because I feel like that's culturally insensitive and inappropriate. But the fact that she was just always there. I don't know. South African society has to be one of the most dynamic societies I've studied in. Perhaps only second to Peru, perhaps. But in modern history, definitely one of the most dynamic, definitely one of the most, things have changed so much and so deeply and so profoundly, and the change has penetrated so many levels of society without penetrating at the same time so many levels of society. So for you to be learning all about, apartheid and the indigenous peoples of South Africa and what happened and the struggle and all the complexity. South Africa is just such a complex society, and you're surrounded by all this complexity. You go home, you're researching like linguistics and Creole languages. Afrikaans is a Creole language, and then you just go outside and there's just this one simple thing that you can look at, and it was her. I don't know. It was her. So I don't know. I strive to be like as strong as Table Mountain is, I guess. I don't know. The kind of person or the kind of thing or the kind of influencer that even in the dark, you're darker than the dark. It's not that you try to outshine the dark, it's that you're darker than the dark. I think that's just a type of strength that I don't know if that applies to humans. I don't know if this even applies to an inanimate object that I'm attaching all of these sentiments to. Or you have this support system behind you. It sort of sometimes made me think of a celebrity. Like, you have this whole support system, there's this whole mountain chain that you belong to, but no one ever sees that. People only ever talked about Table Mountain. I'm only talking about Table Mountain. So I don't know, it just sort of made me reflect on the human condition, despite her being an inanimate object in the middle of Cape Town. So I definitely advise anyone who wants to go to Cape Town, South Africa. It's a beautiful, 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 beautiful. Oh my gosh, such a beautiful place. Um, Look at Table Mountain like when you go. Watch her as the sun sets. Watch as she like dominates the whole sky, and watch her slowly shift to a shadow that still almost dominates this guy. And think about, like, what does that mean? You know, what does it mean to dominate? What does it mean to be strong? What does it mean to be seen by all people at all times? I don't know whatever revelations anyone can take away from that. People, if you're still watching, you probably think I'm just talking gibberish, because I am. But yeah, so I don't know. That was my reflection on Table Mountain. When I was going to write it, when I was still thinking of writing this reflection instead of doing a vlog, I was thinking about Table Mountain and I having a dialogue. I don't know if anyone wants to see what that would be. Let me know, I guess. Sort of like she's this one monolithic figure, and then I'm just a study abroad student, and maybe we envy each other in a way, in that she's so strong and stable and sure of herself, and she's just there. She's just there, and she's there. She's there, and it's almost like she takes pride in being there. She's never not going to be there, whether you like her or not. She's going to be the way she is at all times. Versus me, struggling a lot with identity while being abroad. And, you know, what does it mean to study abroad? What does it mean to be, you know, black or a woman or whatever? And to see something that was just so sure of itself at all times, I don't know, was really reassuring. So I was going to do like a dialogue, like maybe Table Mountain wants to be some random study abroad student from South Carolina. Maybe she wants to move around. Maybe she doesn't want to always be there. Maybe she wants to be ignored sometimes, and she can't. So that was what I was going to write about, like a mental monologue in which Table Mountain wanted to be me, and I wanted to be her. So if you want to see that, let me know. This video has been, wow, it's really quite long. I didn't expect it to be as long as it is. Or as, like, jambled. Is that a word? I don't speak words in English anymore, as I'm probably sure I'll mention this in the other videos. My upper level of English vocabulary is gone after Arabic and Spanish. Like, I just don't have those words at this point in my life. So sorry if the video is all over the place. I used to be able to communicate well, but that was pre-trilingualism. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you watched it, there'll probably be a video tomorrow. I've got some, in my opinion, interesting topics that are not, you know, emotional imprinting on inanimate nature objects. So if you're not down for that, I've got some other stuff that may interest you. And yep, that's it. So see you tomorrow.